Hi everyone, it's Rachel back from the Shades of Orange. Today I'm going to talk about the rest of my December wrap-up. This is going to be a bit of everything. I'm talking mysteries, science fiction, fantasy, and graphic novels. I'm going to put timestamps down below, but let's jump in. Starting with mysteries, I read Bonfire by Krysten Ritter, which I received from Simon & Schuster Canada. This book follows a woman who is going back to her small town. She is going to investigate what happened with a particular company. She thinks that they may have potentially poisoned the water in that town. At the same time, she is looking back in her own childhood. As a teenager, she was bullied by a group of girls, and one of those girls went missing around the end of high school. There was something strange going on where the girls appeared to be faking illnesses. Now she's wondering if something more sinister was happening. The premise sounded great, which is why I picked it up. The book is also, of course, written by the actress Krysten Ritter, who's well known for several TV shows. I'm not a huge pop culture buff. I don't really follow a lot of actresses, but this is one I wanted to check out because it got some really great early reviews. A couple of booktubers that I really respect gave this phenomenal ratings, and I thought I would really love it. I did enjoy this book, but I found it quite average. I don't think that it really brought anything new to the thriller genre, and I was surprised to see it showing up on people's best of the year lists. I just thought it was okay. I've read this plot so many times, and it is a plot I enjoy, but I don't think it was any better than any of the other books I've read. I've done a separate review on this, so if you want to hear more about that, you can check this out. I think it was okay, but not as incredible as other booktubers have made it out to be. I just don't think it quite lives up to the hype, but it's still a decent thriller if you're in the mood for a super fast, quick read. The other thriller I picked up on a whim, and that is The Shadow Broker by Conger. And this I actually received from the author. I read his short story novella, The White Boy, a while back. That was a horror novella, and this is more of a crime thriller, but he sent me a copy and I've just been meaning to pick it up. This is very much that gritty story of a man who was down in his luck. He was previously a private investigator, but lost his license, and as a result has gotten intertwined with the underbelly of society. He is now working for criminals, and this is a fantastic story to read if you enjoy books involving morally gray characters. It is just a lot of fun. It was very fast paced. I was engaged in the story from the first page to the last. I thought it was a lot of fun. And if there's a reason to pick up this book, it is because of the main character, Mr. Finn. He is addicted to coffee. He just had a really great personality. I find the author's writing really easy to get into, and I was just very invested in the main character and just thought it was a lot of fun. So that was one I do actually recommend. I thought it was really great. It's the start of a series, so I might check out the later books as well. Switching to science fiction, I requested Into the Drowning Deep by Mira from Orbit Books. This book is all about killer mermaids, which made me super excited to pick it up, and it did not disappoint. I have done a separate review, so you can watch that if you want my longer thoughts. But this involves a ship that went to the Marianas Trench. Originally, they were trying to film a mockumentary, but something went terribly wrong and everyone died or disappeared in that initial trip. And now another ship has been commissioned to go and find out what happened, and things just go from there. This is primarily a science fiction book, but it definitely has some elements of horror. It was just a lot of fun. It had some really gruesome moments. The creatures in this book are intense and vividly described, and I just really loved it. It was just a lot of fun. It's a very intense, fast-paced story, but at the same time, it has a lot of character development, and I like a book that can marry the two where it's not one or the other, but I thought all the character perspectives were great. It had some fantastic diversity, and I definitely recommend this one. Again, check out my longer review if you want to hear more of my thoughts, but the short is that I definitely recommend this one and would love to see more people reading it in the new year. Now, switching to fantasy, I read Certain Dark Places by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. This could also be described as a horror book, but I felt like it was a bit more of an urban fantasy just because it doesn't have quite all of the horror elements that I'm used to seeing. This is about Mexican vampires. It has some incredible diversity in it. It's quite a nice change to see a story that can bring something new to vampire folklore, and it was just really unique. I like in this story the fact that the world knows that vampires exist and they're not hiding in the shadows, but what transpires is a lot of prejudice and segregation. They are very much second-class citizens, and there's certainly some gruesome aspects to this book, but at the same time it deals with a lot of important topics. I think the author just created a really unique world. I love the world building. In terms of plot, I wasn't super invested in it, but that I think is more about me. I do tend to struggle when it comes to fantasy. I just don't always get really invested in those stories, but I liked what it was doing. I liked the vampires. I listened to it on audiobook and the narration was fantastic. So that's a good one to pick up if it sounds like your kind of book. Last, I've got to talk graphic novels, and I read 2 this month. The first was iZombie by Roberson, and this is very different than the TV show, which was inspired by the graphic novel. Personally, I actually enjoyed the TV show more. I felt like it had a lot more humor, and I liked the plot. The TV show is much more focused on the actual mystery of the story. Essentially, this follows a zombie, and in the graphic novel there are a lot more supernatural creatures, including vampires and a were-terrier werewolf type character. It was good, but a little bit forgettable. The best part for me was the artwork, which I really liked the style. It had some really good illustrations, but it's probably not one I'm going to continue with. It just didn't really grab my attention, so not one I'd personally recommend. The other graphic novel was Saga Volume 8 by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. I think most people know the general premise. It's a space opera with a lot of character development. It is very emotional and entertaining and has some really inappropriate scenes in it. I just loved it. I'm someone who got really tired of some of the middle volumes of the series. I just got bored of it a little bit. I thought the series was going downhill, but this last volume completely redeemed it, and I do recommend it. I thought this last volume was great. It was the last book I read this year and ended the year on such a strong note, so I definitely recommend if you're reading this series, even if you think you're getting tired of it, please keep reading because this last volume was phenomenal. I am so excited to see how this series ends. I hope that they'll end around 10 volumes because it's just going to some great places, and I absolutely love this. So that's it. That is everything else I read in the month of December. If you haven't, please check out the other part of my wrap up, which is all about horror. Otherwise, I'm excited to start talking to you about some of the books I'm reading in the new year. I think this is going to be a phenomenal year for reading. As always, love to hear your comments down below, thoughts about the books you like. Did you agree with me, disagree? And I will talk to you again soon in another video. Thanks so much for watching. Okay, bye.